You're listening to Themes and Memes, a different kind of movie review. My name is Adam, and with me here I have my co-host Aaron. How are you doing today, Aaron?
Doing very well. I'm happy to be back on the show talking to you, reviewing another movie today, Adam.
Yeah, it should be interesting as usual. We are going to cover something which is, I suppose, a little bit different from some of the recent films we've covered. The last one we did was the Doors, sort of, biopic or docudrama film.
Older film, yeah.
Yeah, it was 1991, I think, and we had a couple of other films that were kind of related to that or in line with that we also thought we might cover. But this is a different film, which is similar in a few ways, but very different in others. And so we just thought we'd chuck that in there for something different. And the film in question is The Big Short.
Yep.
So this is a 2015 film. It was late last year.
Yeah, it's one of those films that comes out in late January or late December rather, and so it's designated as 2015, but it runs over to 2016, so you get real confused. And of course, it's made to be a contender in the Academy Awards, which it is nominated for Best Picture this year. So that's a little trick that those sorts of films employ lots of times.
That's right. Any film that's going to be, well, I find at least any film that's going to be that they want to get nominated for an Academy Award will often come out later in the year. So sort of a November, December theatrical release, and then it's sort of at its peak of popularity, I'd say around January. That period of time. And another little trick, which I just remembered, and this is just a little aside, but I just thought I'd mention it as another little trick that they often use for films that they want to get nominated, is to release a screener. Now the screeners for films are sent around to other studios, distribution companies, reviewers, professional film reviewers, etc. And obviously these will sometimes get leaked on the net as well. And so I just wanted to mention, I always find it funny, you can usually tell when a film is going to get nominated for an Academy Award because you can get a copy of it online, much faster than you would otherwise be, as the screener is always available. And that's a trend I've seen over and over and over again. Yeah. So definitely, somebody there is definitely wanting everybody to see this film.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's what we're here to do today. What is it that they want us to know? Why is this film being put out there in the way it is? That sort of thing. So, as we usually do here on Themes and Memes, we're going to hit this movie up in such a way. And you were mentioning our last show about The Doors and how that this film had some similarities. I definitely think that it does, and you wouldn't think so just on the surface. But the main thing there with that would be that this is a true story, right? That's how this film is being sold. In all the trailers were very big on portraying this as a true story. It's all true, it said. Like, it's shocking, but it was all true. And you've got the characters it's one of those ensemble cast films with lots of big stars. So there's no like main character. You're following all these different stories, but all those different characters are based on real people. They changed the names of the characters, the real people they're based on in most cases, but they're at least loosely based on real people who actually did these things. And so the similarity there to The Doors is that, the biopic of Jim Morrison and The Doors, that was their biography on film. So that was a true story too. Would you like to pick up on this point, Adam?
Yeah. I mean, that was definitely part of the promotion of the film. I mean, it says it on the poster. It says a true story. And I think at the beginning of the film as well, they've got the little, like prologue, it says something like, this film was based on real events, blah, blah, blah. And as you say, you've got ensemble cast all playing real people. And, if you go, I can't remember the actual names of all the people who these actors are playing. But if you go to like the Wikipedia page or the IMDb page, you'll see, this actor plays this person who was actually there at the time, a real person, etc. So they obviously, really made a point to do that. And, for that reason, it was marketed, technically as a biopic drama, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's the name.
Yeah. They wanted, the filmmakers wanted the audience to come in there watching the film as if it was a true story, and like, hey, look, we're talking about reality. We're talking about the big banks. We're talking about corruption. We're also talking about this small group of guys who, figured things out. These smart guys, and everybody else had their head in the clouds. They didn't want to listen to them. These rogue sort of outlawish type kind of guys who come in and make a profit. But you and I were just talking about this, Adam, a minute ago before we recorded. But this film, in an attempt to portray it as even more real, as if this is, nonfiction even, they use a lot of techniques from documentary filmmaking to achieve those ends. Did you notice that?
Yeah. There was, I think there's obviously a number of different examples we could look at, but I think one of the things that stood out to me the most is that at one moment you've got these actors playing these different characters, and it's done in typical dramatic fashion. It's the audience is sitting and watching things from an objective stance, and just like any other film. But then what will happen is they will get to a point in the film where they are dealing with, for example, like a complex financial concept to do with
there's a lot of moments in the film with those.
A lot of that. It's
like the whole film is all that.
Yeah. And obviously a big part of this film, which deals, I'm not sure if we mentioned this, but it deals with the 2008 Wall Street crash. The housing bubble.
Yes, we should do that.
We should probably mention that.
Yeah.
And it's obviously supposed to be telling the truth about what really happened, and the fact that this was, caused by greed, incompetence, stupidity of people involved, etc. But anyway, because they deal with so many of these complex financial structures and concepts, which the average person, the layman, is not really going to be familiar with, they need to make an effort to make it, palatable and understandable. And so what they do is the actors who are playing these real people who did participate in these events will stop with their script for one moment and turn to the camera. So they break the fourth wall, as it's called in film, in theatre at least anyway, and they'll turn to the camera and explain something in simple terms, and say, hey audience, just so you know, this is what we're talking about, this is how it works. And in addition to that, what they'll also do is they will bring on, they'll include scenes of sort of just these random celebrities.
And they'll be introduced as their real life celebrity. Like, it's this celebrity in this silly situation, and they're going to kind of be funny when they explain this thing to you, because that's going to make it more easier to digest, and it's comic relief and all that sort of thing. But definitely a documentary technique, because documentaries require comic relief just like narrative films, but you never see this sort of thing in a narrative film. You never cut away from the actual story to a real life person who's just explaining facts about the film, and it's like an aside sort of thing. It like totally cuts away from the movie, and here, I'm this person that this is a little like news segment almost, and I'm going to explain it to you, I'm going to be funny at the same time, and then it's back to the movie. I don't remember ever seeing a movie that employed that, and it's definitely something you see in documentary film.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've seen similar techniques used, similar but not the same, and certainly not in this context, where again we're going from fictional drama to real life person explaining something directly to the camera in documentary narration, and then switching straight back to the script again. And one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting about that is for example, I think the first time they do this, what they do is they turn to, I think it's the Ryan Gosling character turns to the camera and explains something and says, oh, well, this is all very complicated, so for you people at home, here's blah, blah, blah to explain it for you. And they cut to a shot of some like supermodel in a bathtub.
It looks like she's in some sort of Malibu home that overlooks the ocean or something like that. And that's the intent. It's like, here, it's this real woman that and has sex appeal. So it's kind of like it's dumbing down this message that is being portrayed as like, yes, this is complicated, and we know you're just a simpleton. So let's,
this is it. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I was getting at, and this is done a number of points throughout the film. And they have like, I mean, I don't know who that supermodel woman is.
I didn't know who that was. No,
but so it's. The very first instance where they do that, it's dumbed down and sexed up as much as possible, and they even make a little reference to that how that is funny, and how, you again, you simple little people at home, here's something, simplified and sexed up for you to understand, because you just wouldn't understand what we're talking about.
Yeah,
if we
they do
didn't
that
do
time
this,
and time again throughout the film. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, okay, here we go. We know that you don't understand us. It's okay. It's like they're talking to a child the whole time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a number of other bits of scripted dialogue in the film where they make reference to this fact. There's again, when we switch to the kind of narration, speaking to the camera script there, I think it's mainly the Ryan Gosling guy who's doing most of the narration, but I'm pretty sure there are at least a couple of other instances where he makes some reference to the fact that, in order to explain this, we've got to do this because you guys are just too stupid.
Yeah. And that's all part of his character, because he does play the part of the narrator. Like, so he's the narrator, but he's also a character in the film, and he's also, he's one of the big bad bankers, and so the fact that he talks down to you is another reason for you kind of not to like him. So in a sense, you sort of have the anti-hero's character being one of the main characters here. That's a trend that's been popular lately. So there's that sort of thing going on too.
Yeah, and they do have. I think that they have done. Well, they have made some kind of an effort to set certain characters up as heroes or anti-heroes. I think you're supposed to identify one way or another with most of them. We're supposed to have some kind of fairly strong opinion about these people, not only because of their position in Wall Street and what they're doing, but personality types and the way they come across and all that. So there's they're definitely using the typical dramatic filmmaking techniques to that effect.
Yeah, bizarre film. I'll just mention real quick another documentary technique I saw is they'll cut to these quick sequences where they show like news clips and other stuff from TV. They interjected a lot of just like quick clips from popular culture. Like they'll show like Britney Spears for a split second or something like that. They use that to the effect of showing a lot of times to show where the public consciousness, mass consciousness was while this was all happening. Like, behind the scenes, the banks are really scamming us with this whole mortgage-backed security thing, but nobody's none the wiser because they're looking at Britney Spears or whatever other clip that they show. So again, same thing, mocking the audience.
Mocking the audience.
Same thing. Yeah. And but also referencing the fact that this is all real. So you are really a stupid person is one of the things going on there, I guess.
Yeah, that's definitely going on. I mean, there is, again, getting back to what you were saying with the cutting to scenes of, just junk, like television, Britney Spears or some other pop star, or cooking shows or reality TV, any of the sort of, I don't know, just boring mainstream culture that
I can't remember any of the clips because they're just so mundane and disposable that I don't remember one specifically.
Well, yeah, I neither can I come to think of it. I mean, I remember them like that they were there though, and I remember they're done in the style where they will cut away from the actual storyboard and go include a very fast sequence of these clips that are like bang, 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 and you just sort of see like a sprawling city, traffic jams, a pop star, junk food, all these types of things that they're sort of are supposed to like epitomize the I don't know,
vacuous
Western civilization. Yeah, the vacuous nature of Western civilization. Yeah,
nonsensical, exactly. Mindless.
Yeah, that's it. And so it's you, the audience, is stupid because this is where you've been while all this was going on. You've been paying attention to this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we switch over to focusing on the financial aspect of this and the truth and maybe the omissions and all that? What are your thoughts on this possibly being an expose of the bankers and that sort of thing, Adam?
Well, finance and economics is certainly not my strong suit.
Yeah,
they're tough. I would, it's tough. Yeah, and it's again one of the things that they brought out at the beginning of the film, the narration, which I thought was very interesting, and I think this is absolutely true. And of many areas, what they said was that people in Wall Street, people in investment banking, stockbroking, etc., will create their own set of terminology and their own words, their own jargon, their own phrases that sound overly complicated and that are actually much more complicated than they really are in reality, and that this is done for the sole purpose of confusing the outsider.
Yes.
Of making the average person think that, oh gosh, all that stuff is just too complicated for little old me. I would never be able to understand this. So what I'm going to do is I'll just defer my reasoning, my authority to the people who do understand it, because they must be so much smarter than me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really clever. Or maybe if not clever, I think it was poignant, because I think this happens everywhere. I think it happens in science. It's happened in religion, finance, etc. So many areas. But anyway, so getting back to the concept of this being an expose. I mean, I think I would agree to that to some degree. In that what they did was they showed you, or they illustrated the fact that a lot of these big, investment banks on Wall Street were taking a whole bunch of, subprime mortgage loans, that basically they were not secure, they were no good. The chances were that people were going to default on them, and they knew that, and they were essentially just repackaging them with a whole bunch of other more highly rated, loans, and with basically trading these bonds with other banks by way of just mixing the bad ones in with the good ones, not having any investigation done as to the true legitimacy of these bonds, and then selling them off for a huge profit. So they were taking, really, really bad financial assets and moving them on, sprucing them up and selling them as really, really good financial assets. And this is the whole premise on which this thing unfolded, and the whole thing fell apart. So, and as much as they illustrated how that works, or that worked at least, I think it would have been an expose, but at the same time, we're talking about a mainstream Hollywood film here. And I think there's probably a lot more to it, and there's probably a lot more nuance in terms of how this thing unfolded, and who knew what, and how much people knew, and what their intentions were, that was probably omitted from this, although I do believe it may have been alluded to at certain points, but we can get back to that.
No details on who may have known and who might have been like the real intelligence behind making these sorts of things happen. The way that the movie works is that, as in the trailer makes a point like, these banks are so stupid that these guys making these big short bets, can profit on it. So we're going to profit on their stupidity. And so that whole point is runs throughout the movie with the people in the banking industry that you see, the corrupt people you see, are all the lowest level guys. Like these morons who come in and are like, yeah, I used to be a bartender, but now I do this. And the people who are in charge of giving all these loans out at the bottom level, basically, you're like, I my job is just to get people in a house, and that's it. And it shows how they don't care if the people are going to pay, and they're taking advantage of immigrants and all this stuff. So they show these guys who are portrayed as absolute morons and jerks, like real bad guys who aren't smart. That's all that you see, and the closest you get to like people higher up is probably like with the Ryan Gosling character. He's like working with Deutsche Bank, and he actually knows what's going on, but you don't really see what he's even doing the whole time. So the focus is on the bottom for sure. And when you do that, yes, I mean, it makes sense that, it is because of stupidity, because their stupidity perpetuated all this. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, this is it. I was exactly my thoughts. And I think this kind of, spin, if you want to call it that, is put on a lot of these types of documentaries, because since 2008 there have been a number of pretty well financed, well promoted documentaries that deal with the 2008 crash, and the sort of predominant theme that comes up again and again, as it does in this film, is that what we see at the bottom levels is really all there is to it, when I would argue that is simply one layer of what's happening. And as you say, I mean, at these low levels where you've just got people who are trading just for their own financial interest and nothing more, just to line their own pockets, then yes, it is greed. It is short-sightedness, and the script in this film alludes to that. And as you say, people are saying, well, I don't really care about, what the big picture is. I don't really care how the larger mechanism works here. I just do my job, and I just do what I need to do to make as much money as I can. Mm-hmm. And so, again, while that is true, I don't think it's the whole picture. And I think that although they didn't really directly, I suppose, explore what you might call some of the higher levels of perhaps orchestration that may have been present here, I think they were alluded to. In as much as there were little bits of dialogue between some of these characters in the film, that sort of just, it was more, it was kind of inferred that although, yes, a lot of this is due to incompetence, stupidity, short-sightedness, corruption, etc., there are people at higher levels who can see that this is happening, can see that it's not sustainable, can see that this can only go in one direction, and are keeping their mouths shut and are going with it. Yeah. So I didn't go incredibly deeply into that, but I do think that if you read between the lines, there are perhaps at least some allusions to the fact that there were multiple layers going on here.
Yeah, well, that's a good point right there, because it brings up the question as to the motivations of the filmmakers. How much and in what way do they want the audience to come away with a sense of outrage? And where is, because clearly they're trying to do that. It's like, this 2008 crash happened. Remember this. And at the end, they go into the details about the bailouts and how the guys who should have been held responsible weren't. Like, one guy was thrown in prison. That's it. All these bankers, investment bankers, made these huge amounts of money, and personally, and then they get bailed out. The institutions that failed us got bailed out. So it's just like a reminder of that stuff. It's like, hey, remember this? That's still true. Remember? So, I mean, what do you think the motivations were, and what's going on with all that?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I mean, on a very basic level, I would say that the motivations were to invoke a sense of outrage, to remind, as you say, remind people that this happened. And again, there's that bit of the end of the film you're talking about, where it sort of just references the fact that basically they all got away with it, and some little guy at the bottom was used as a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, like one guy.
Yeah, one guy who's like probably at the lower end of it.
Yeah.
And so obviously this direct effort, I think, to invoke outrage there. But what was I going to say? There's another little. Yeah, that's right. Just after they mentioned that at the end, they also talk about the fact that although this, the film was based on the lead up to the 2008 Wall Street crash, they say that this is still going on today.
Yes.
They talk about these particular financial concepts, these kind of products called, I think, is it CDO?
CDO was the original, and they say that they changed the name of it, but they're still doing it.
Yeah. Well, there was like the CDOs, then there was like synthetic CDOs, which is just, another layer to that concept, like gambling on a gamble, or however they describe it. Mm-hmm. And they talk at the end of the film, they talk about the fact that, although the name has been changed and they've sort of the exact way in which they're creating and selling these products may be different, basically the exact same thing is going on. So again, it's trying to invoke outrage about the past and say that, again, you should still be really essentially outraged because it's happening right now.
Yeah. And worry about the future. Yeah.
Yeah, and worry about the future, exactly. But yeah, I mean, in terms of I guess the intent for a film like this, and what kind of message were they trying to get out, and what reaction were they trying to evoke in people? I think it's a multi-layered thing. Again, I think we've just, in as much as they will reveal some of the truth, but perhaps just kind of gloss over some of the other more nuanced and perhaps more profound truths. I think, this ties into perhaps the response they're trying to, get from the public, and that we're trying to get you angry about this. But I think there are other layers to that as well, because one of the things which I found interesting in the film was, we talk about the juxtaposition briefly there earlier about how we see the greed of some of these bankers and their complete lack of regard for how their actions are actually affecting the the everyday public, the average homeowner, etc. And we cut from scenes of bankers living in absolute luxury and riding around with limos, going to parties and all the rest of it, to people living in cardboard houses. So there's a lot of juxtaposition there. But one thing that really stood out to me in that regard was that although we are supposed to hate the bankers for this, because we, the average audience, we don't have that kind of money. We're not in that world. Their actions really have affected us in a big way. We're rightly angry at them. I found in this film that there was almost a kind of a subtle inference that the life of an investment banker or some kind of stock trader is still more preferable, because what we see in this film is that these people have the best life. They have more money than anybody else, and at the very end of it all, they still get away with it. So who wins here? Who wins in this film? Wall Street wins. The average person gets screwed over, and Wall Street wins happily. Nobody really loses.
I think the way that they used the location of Las Vegas works to this effect pretty well. You follow me on that point? How they go to Las Vegas for this convention of, again, all the guys on the bottom who are making all the money on the CDOs and really scamming people, and their job is just to get as many mortgages going as possible. That crowd, and their convention is appropriately in Las Vegas, which is I bet that probably may be true to life, because I don't think many people realize this about Las Vegas, but it's a huge convention city. They have so many conventions there. That's what helps drive their economy, because you need to get people in the city. You have the big conventions, and then they spend money in the casino.
Yeah.
But anyway, it would make sense because these guys at the bottom are creatures of vice, and so they go to Las Vegas and they do what they do. They have their convention, they're greedy, and they're all excited about that, and they have all this money, so they're probably spending it on all the terrible things you can spend your money on in Las Vegas. So the audience gets to hate them for that, but they also get to envy them for that, because the average person likes going to Las Vegas too. And I will bring this up, from the numbers, in terms of like an economic standpoint, prostitution is huge. I mean, when you look at the numbers of the money it makes, it really makes you wonder, like, man, there's a lot of money, people spending money on this. So, these are the sorts of things that make the big money, the vice, the Sin City stuff, the gambling. People love that sort of thing. And they wish that they could live that life, because it's extravagant and you need tons of disposable income to sustain such a thing. But it's a very base way to live. And again, if we're talking about a base way to live, this comes back into the concept of talking to the audience and talking down to the audience and saying, hey, look, we know you're base creatures. We know that you want to be the ones going to this convention in Las Vegas and partaking in all these hedonistic pleasures and all the nonsense that Vegas has to offer. We know you love that stuff, but you're not one of these guys. But would you like to be one of these guys? Probably.
That's kind of what I was getting at. That's exactly what I was getting at. It was you're presented with the immediate moral outrage and sense of indignation that this is going on, because you're not part of that club and you're getting screwed over by these guys.
Yeah.
But with the film as a whole, if you're looking at that in very basic terms, it's simply a question of, well, which side would you rather be on? Which team would you rather join? These guys are getting everything that you want in life, and they're getting away with it. So it's a simple case of well, I mean, not a simple case, but it's a matter of ignoring your conscience, so to speak. And we see this throughout the film as well. There's a number of conversations with one that comes to mind is with the Steve Carell character, when he's in Las Vegas at this conference there. He's sitting down to dinner with he's an Asian guy. I can't remember what he was supposed to be.
Yeah, he's kind of like the director of all the other guys. I forget what their exact title is, but the guys at the bottom of the CDO chain again.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's explaining to him how the whole CDO concept works, and he's explaining that how he has not only trading in CDOs, but he creates synthetic CDOs, and that these are not actually investigated or examined by any external authority like the SEC or anything like that, and how, for that reason they can simply create. Well, they can take absolute, financial garbage, make it look like gold, and make a huge profit on it. And he's smiling and laughing. And the Steve Carell is getting outraged, of course. But, at scenes like that, we have the immediate outrage of what is being said and what is being explained to us. But on the other hand, we are also presented with the fact that this is happening. There are ways in which a person could, ostensibly justify this to themselves. And you can get away with it. You can make a lot of money and get away with it. And there's so many other references in the film regarding the amount of money that these guys are making, and how, what the guy was saying. I can't remember what it was, something to the effect of, I was living in a basement 3 years ago, now I own my own boat, and all this kind of stuff. So the average person's going to look at this, and once the indignation's gone away, it's kind of like, well,
how do I do that?
Can I get in on some of this? Yeah.
How do I get more smarter to do this?
Yeah, how do I get more smarter? but yeah, I thought that was a subtle angle that was being pushed in the film. In that regard. So we've got, again, just to reiterate, the very simply, immediate outrage and indignation, go a little deeper, and you've got envy, essentially. You've got a sense of jealousy and wanting to be in on that, and thinking, well, okay, if this works, we can do this, we can get away with it, then I want in. And I think that was probably perhaps I don't know. It seemed to me to be deliberate. That's what it seemed to me to be, that this was not done arbitrarily or by accident.
No, I'm pretty sure it was purposeful. And another thing that leads me to say that is the trailer. This is one of those movies where the trailer is just like a doozy. You had me at the trailer. And it's, what I mean? Like, they just pack so many of these ideas that we're talking about here into the trailer. Because the trailer, again, they play up the idea that, like, all the stupidity, we can profit off their stupidity, these dumb banks, and they're corrupt and they're dumb. So that is crammed in there. The idea that this is all a true story, it's all true, this is real, you're coming to watch a documentary. And you come into the movie and they use documentary techniques to make you think it's a documentary. And the whole Vegas thing, they throw in the Vegas stuff in the trailer too, and they show the strippers like, we're going to the inside of these corrupt bankers. They're having their convention in Vegas, and the way the trailer operates, they kind of make you think it's like, again, the guys who are really running the shows, like the big bankers, they would have their convention out in Vegas, right? Because that's where you have fun. And that's, if you're a corrupt guy, you would just want to live out there. But then in the film, it comes out that's the low-level guys. And yes, they're doing all the stuff in Vegas, but, it's more nuanced than the trailer leads on, of course. But of course, I don't even know where I'm going with this at this point.
Well, that's how you're going to sell the narrative, is with the sensational, with the extreme, with taking the guys at the lower level who are, sort of like hedonistic, very, very indulgent, they're splashing around lots of money, they're kind of openly corrupt almost, and it's all coke and hookers and all that kind of stuff, and so it looks like the Wolf of Wall Street stuff,
Yeah, and, if there's a corrupt guy, that's how he operates, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. So again, we get back to the different layers or the different levels, and so, I don't think this film would have sold nearly as well if we had, I don't know, let's say a bunch of bankers meeting in some hotel in the countryside in Switzerland, like sort of some Bilderberg type scenario, I mean, obviously that's kind of like the next level or layer up, if you will. But in order to get audiences interested, in order to create the emotion that's required for dramatic filmmaking, it's going to be the lower levels. And of course, it's not just for marketing purposes alone. It's also because I think the general narrative that they're pushing here, and this is all down to very basic things like incompetence, short-sightedness, and greed, that all exists at that level, and so
the only level that you as the general public are able to see, that's as far as it goes, so it's kind of like throwing up a smoke screen to real in-depth realities and keeping people in the dark, so to speak, in the lower from the occult world, the lower like animal centers of the brain. That's how they would explain it in the occult. So keeping things at that level.
Yeah, and this is I think this ties into the general theme of this film and many others like it, and that you are told that you're going to get some real truth. You're going to be given some revelations, and you're going to really understand how everything works after this. But what you're getting is simply one piece of it. You're getting one aspect of it. A sort of one of the more simple, immediately recognizable facets of this whole situation. And although that's all it is, of course, the filmmakers and Hollywood, whoever else is going to push this as this is it. This is the whole story. This is you're really getting in on the big secret here.
Now, what about this? Another thing that they do throughout the film is, for most of the film, it's just the main characters talking about and talking in these economic terms that are, again, insider terms that don't make a lot of sense to the average person. They're talking a mile a minute, like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and the audience can't follow it. Was that done purposely to kind of keep this sense of, man, I really don't know what's going on here, but I wish that I did? What do you think about that?
Well, that's interesting, because that gets back to this other sort of filmmaking technique we were talking about, where they will turn to the camera, explain something in narration, sort of a narrated style, and also include these clips of celebrities, etc., explaining things. Because, again, initially we are given these basic explanations, whether it be from one of the actors or whether it be from one of the celebrities, it's dumbed down, as we say, sexed up, etc. And so the feeling is that, well, although these things are quite complex, the filmmakers are making an effort to make them palatable and understandable to us. But I think towards the middle and probably the end of the film, I did notice that they stopped doing this, and they do what you were just talking about there, in terms of they have these very, very fast, loaded bits of dialogue, with lots of people all talking at the same time, using all this insider terminology, all this kind of Wall Street jargon. And all of a sudden we're back in the dark again. We're totally confused. We can't follow it. There'll be 2 minutes of script and we only understand about 3 words.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting that on one hand, they are making an effort to really explain things, but on the other, once they've kind of, I don't know, perhaps got your trust, they sort of they throw all that away and they go straight back into all this complex, convoluted jargon and get you confused again. So again, I think we kind of got 2 competing, I don't know, angles to this.
Yeah, I feel like it's being done in part to keep people of the mind that, hey, look, I can't understand this. This is overly complex. Again, I have to defer to the experts, even though they told me it's not that complicated, and they use all this confusing jargon on purpose. Now they're here doing it, and I'm left not knowing what to do about it.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's very interesting, because I think that would point towards a deliberate effort on that, to that effect, because what they're doing is saying, well, we will acknowledge that Wall Street uses deliberately convoluted terms in order to confuse the outsider, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. In order to make you think that you can't understand it and it's best left to these experts. And so we will acknowledge that, we'll concede to that, and we'll make an effort to explain things to you. And we're basically, here we are getting on your level. And then once they've done that, making things complicated again. So it kind of has the effect of making the audience think that, well, hold on, I'm getting confused here, but they've dumbed it down. I mean, they told me they dumbed it down. So if they've dumbed it down and I'm still not getting it, then it must be really complicated.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that is a good point right there. I think that whether that was intentional or not, that's what happened. I know that for a fact. I can't say what the filmmakers' motivations might have been, but that definitely was the final outcome.
Yeah. I mean, I had something of that feeling myself. Again,
I did.
It's not something that, it's not my forte. I don't understand it in complex detail, and so when you think you've got a grasp on it, you think you've got a hold on it because it's been explained to you, and then they go off back into all this convoluted terminology again. It's just like, whoa, hold on. I thought I had a handle on this. I don't. Oh shit.
Yeah. Now, what about? Let's talk about the Brad Pitt character, because he's interesting. What do you have to say about that? Could you just explain the details on him, what you think of him?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I just want to mention that this film was also produced or co-produced by Brad Pitt.
Correct.
So that's just an interesting little nugget right there.
Oh, yeah.
And people can maybe think about that. But yeah, so we have the Brad Pitt plays a former, I think, was he a stockbroker?
He was, he was a big investment guy. I don't know what his exact role was, but he worked within one of the big banks. Which one was it? It was like Deutsche Bank or something he worked within.
Yeah, again, a lot of detail in this film that I can't always remember. But anyway, so he was a relatively successful, well-renowned,
He was a Wall Street tycoon.
Wall Street, yeah, he was a Wall Street tycoon. However, the story goes that he at some point grew some kind of a conscience and was disgusted at what was happening and didn't want to have anything to do with it. But what happens in the film is two of the characters that we follow are a couple of guys who have from some small town in the US who have done their degree in finance or whatever and have decided to run their own small trading company.
A garage investment firm, as it's referred to.
That's right. That's what they call it, garage investment firm.
Very much in the vein of Wozniak and Jobs, kind of elicits that sort of feel. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. You got it.
But instead of technology, you're talking finance now.
Yeah. It's the the sort of the grassroots pull yourself by your bootstraps entrepreneurial thing going on there.
Yeah.
But so we see these guys. They're approaching one of the big banks. Which is it? Is it
Chase?
J.P. Morgan? Chase. Yeah. So it's Chase Manhattan, right?
Mm-hmm. So J.P. Morgan Chase actually.
J.P. Morgan Chase
Same
Manhattan.
Thing.
That's right. Yeah. So they approach these people and they want to. They've got some kind of proposal for an investment plan. That they want in on some big trades, and they're told that because you don't actually have this particular license, I've forgotten what it's called, but it's a license that you need to actually participate in a certain level of trading. That they can't get in on the act, and so they're sort of left to their own devices doing this small time stuff. And so what they do is they contact one of their old neighbors from their hometown or whatever, which is this Brad Pitt character who used to be on that level and who has the ability to get them into the gig, so to speak.
Yep.
And so that that's going to elicit his help in doing so. And throughout that process, they come across some kind of memo or a note who's been left by the Christian Bale character, who has recently been investigating the subprime mortgages and has discovered, or at least his thesis is that this is all a big bubble that's going to crash at some point.
He's the rogue genius who cracks the code.
Yeah, he's one of the outsiders.
Yeah.
One of the outsiders that they mention, and all these people are kind of in the film that we're following are really portrayed as outsiders, and this is kind of how they figured things out. But anyway, so they realize that because these subprime bonds that are being sold off are so easy to get a hold of and are so cheap, and that there's a way to make money, a huge amount of money on this big scam that they listen to the help of Brad Pitt and get him on board to get them into the game, and so they can start trading on a higher level, and so he helps them do that. And I just thought it was interesting the particular character that he plays, because essentially in this film he is kind of the conspiracy theorist, I suppose, in a way, isn't he?
Very, very much so. Yeah, his whole worldview. It epitomizes the truth movement and the goals of the truth movement. He's trying to go off the grid, live off the land, grow his own food. He's worried about the NSA spying on him, so he takes all these measures to prevent that. He's paranoid, all that stuff.
Yeah. There's lots of little references and little nuggets, included there. That make direct, allusions to conspiracy topics and truth movement stuff, NSA. And there's also a reference like the Monsanto. He's talking about food. Or
That's
farming.
right.
He's talking about seeds. And
that's right.
So
he's saving seeds. So obviously he's buying products from a GCN network that he's advertised.
watching InfoWars.
Yeah, he must be.
That was interesting, because again, it's just when we see this character, it's just a whole bunch of name dropping almost. It's sort of like they've gone and taken the average kind of Alex Jones Patriot fan or something like that.
Yeah.
And just gotten a whole bunch of the all the little terms and words and
it's all
kind
there.
of opinions.
It's all there. I mean, it's clear to see when you understand that stuff. And of course, he's the
Yeah.
insider that turns. And yeah, again, he grows a conscience, and then he goes for the ideal lifestyle of, that portrayed by the truth movement and all that. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, and this is the kind of the kind of individual that we've seen pop up in the truth movement over the years. This is kind of a common, I don't know, path.
Oh, the
so
expert that is now
the
turned.
expert.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
These people are always being interviewed on the Alex Jones show, etc. It's always the guy he was in investment banking, he was up there working for some government agency, and now he's grown a conscience and he's out there speaking the truth about what really goes on, and he's like living off the grid and
a major general, a CIA director,
yeah,
or whatever, someone like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these guys are all like a dime a dozen. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's I think there's a deliberate effort to, I suppose, I don't know, appeal to the conspiracy crowd, so to speak, appeal to people who are interested in the financial system, the corruption within the financial system, and all the other related topics which kind of stem down from that and to do with food, resources, government rights, all these other issues. And so yeah,
it comes back to
Brad Pitt.
It comes back to the question is, to what extent are they placating that audience and trying to, incite them? And this gets back to some of the stuff we were talking about in the old review we did on Assault on Wall Street, where I definitely think they were doing that and kind of inciting the violent, reactionary, almost militia dream of, coming in there violently and, shooting up the banks. So I mean, this is such a complex topic, but I really feel, Adam, I think you probably agree to some extent, that this placation of the truth movement is very much a real thing. Hollywood is doing it. And you can't talk about this quick, but let's try to just quickly touch on, what is this all about? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. Definitely, this is happening. I mean, not just in this film, but in so many other films, which we talk about, so often in our podcast here. The Hollywood's placation and efforts to appeal and appease, the truth movement crowd, etc. And the Assault on Wall Street, we have the violent reactionary dream. The kind of I don't know, like right-wing libertarian militia sort of thing with
grab your AK-47. It's time to stop talking. It's time to start acting.
Right. It's kind of like that. It kind of follows that whole second Civil War narrative, of reclaiming our country and making America great again and taking back our rights and going in there with guns
and electing Donald Trump.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. So I actually was thinking of Donald Trump when
I used his campaign slogan there. I'm pretty sure was it making America great.
Oh, that's his favorite line. He uses all the time. Yeah.
I couldn't help it.
Yeah. But, the John Wayne, sorting out town, fix it all up and take us back to the golden age. So you got that whole narrative going on a lot, especially in films like Assault on Wall Street. Yeah. And this is a bit different, but again, we have. I think what they're doing is playing to some other similar sense of wanting to right the wrongs of the world and wanting to take matters into our own hands and bring about some kind of justice. Because in this scenario, with the Brad Pitt kind of conspiracy theorist, we've got someone who was working within the system, who understands the system, who grew a conscience and left the system, who is now speaking out against the system to a degree anyway. And that person then taking the next step and using their financial knowledge, their contacts, their experience, their expertise, all the rest of it to actually inflict some kind of damage on the system.
And or at least exploit it.
Exploit it, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So although nothing is really being done other than, basically the only sort of immediate benefit that he or any of his colleagues in the film are really getting out of this is the fact that they're able to make money out of it. They're able to profit off this chaos, Yeah. But at the same time, there is a kind of there's something of a narrative in there which suggests that, well, and this is we see this in other characters as well, that we're not going to be able to stop this crash, but because we know it's happening, we are going to get some kind of revenge or feel some kind of justice through the fact that we're able to exploit it, we're able to profit from it, and through that we're able to feel as if we've hurt the banks and that we've benefited from it. So I think again we've got this other similar narrative being pushed here, where the person who is outraged at all of this, who has a moral objection to what's happening, is able to achieve some kind of catharsis through this whole process, and that they're able to at least, I don't know, profit or achieve something on a personal level from this, and it feel as if they've done some damage, So I think that was very, very deliberate again, and although it's a little bit more subtle in this film, I think it does again play to this whole theme of placating the truth movement, placating people who are upset with what's happening, who have some kind of objection to it.
Yeah.
And it almost ties right back into what we were talking about before, and that we referenced the fact that there's a kind of a ploy here to make people identify with all of this financial corruption and think, well, if I can't beat it, then I may as well join it. And it's kind of what we see here.
Yeah. And I'll just say it, that I think that the mainstream in general is making some kind of effort to, again, placate the truth movement, to incite them, to make them more and more reactionary and radical, right-wing radicals. They want that. They want right-wing radicals to come up and rise up and be the little lone wolf terrorists that they hope they will be, alongside of, whatever. And it gets complex real quick. But so I'll just say that I think that there is a real effort to do that. This film is just one of a whole bunch of things that does that to some extent, at least, just kind of props up the truth movement, saying, yeah, hey, you know what? You guys are right. Just keep fighting the good fight. And, maybe you could be like Ben Rickard or whatever. Keep striving towards that ideal. Keep fighting the good fight. And the whole time, I don't know. When it comes to the details of this and where this is all going, I can only speculate, and I'm really only speculating on this whole thing anyway, so I will say that. But I really do believe that is happening, and I see signs of it. And it's growing more complex all the time. It's something that we really need to keep our eyes on and attempt to understand it in as much as we can. So I'll just say that.
Yeah, I think that's it. This is another instance of this general narrative being pushed in a film. And again, I've said this before, but there have been quite a few documentaries over the years that go, they go so far in explaining and illustrating what happened in order to present a certain conclusion, in order to evoke a certain type of reaction. And although this film will, again, I think it does allude to the fact that there were higher levels to this, which were much more aware of what was going on and that perhaps wanted this to happen, and it wasn't simply just a case of short-sightedness. The emphasis was all on the immediately recognizable corruption, the immediately recognizable greed, in order to incite people, as you say. And so, this is another film in this whole series of films and documentaries which is designed to incite outrage, indignation, and to push a narrative of basically getting back at the financial system in some way, shape, or form. It's most especially with the fact that at the end of the film, they even make a joke about the fact that there were no consequences for anybody involved. Because it's at the very final sequence of the film, or last few sort of scenes where the what's his face is Ryan Gosling sort of narrating and explaining how this bank went under, these people got arrested, and then it sort of just stops and says, no, just kidding, none of that happened. So trying to make you angry, and so multiple levels going on here, but I definitely agree with you in that there is incitement here. They're appealing to a certain crowd, people of a certain mind who are
people who at least have who at least have some form of indignation already, and who are upset already. They knew that those people were going to go see the movie, and they let you know that, hey, that's what this movie is about, and hey, we know all those documentaries you've seen. Hey, this is just an extension of that, because this is all a true story, and this is essentially just another documentary because we use documentary techniques in the film. So, it's just another link in the chain all those things for you. So this gets back to the idea of reality and fiction. I guess you could say here being sort of nonfiction and then Hollywood narrative film. That's how the two are being intertwined in this case, is that we have typical Hollywood narratives meeting up with documentaries and having this sort of odd sort of child.
Yeah. Well, it kind of reminds me of something we've seen in other films. And this is usually done in different ways, different filmmaking techniques. But the bottom line is here is it's a kind of a merging or a blurring the line, shall we say, between the worlds of fact and fiction. So we've got we've got essentially what's a true story being told, but it's done with poetic license, dramatic license. Yeah, and it's on top of that, they're switching between what is a dramatization to a real life person playing themselves, explaining something to the camera. So again, we've got switching back and forth between the world of drama and the world of kind of fact, so to speak. And so, I'm always interested when I see that in films. I'm always interested as to why that is being done, or at least what effect that is having on an audience when they're sort of switching gears all the time. And what kind of conclusions does that lead people towards? Yeah. And how does it make them feel?
You could say be a bit dissociative too.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying.
How about that?
Kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah. There you go.
It's disassociated. We've got something. We're presented with things that are really quite horrible and which have had a tremendous effect. Really awful effect on a lot of people. They're being presented in comedic fashion. With comic relief. Mm-hmm. And we're jumping to all these scenes of these celebrities explaining things in comedic fashion, with supermodels and pop stars and lots of jokes and laughs. And so there is a bit of dissociation going on there. And so on that note, I think, if we looked at a lot, this film in that light, I think there's quite a lot of disassociation going on in general with sort of these competing themes and these appealing to different sensibilities and, sort of appealing to your indignation in one breath and then sort of appealing to your envy in the next, or your, whatever.
Yeah, very interesting. A lot going on in this film, and I'm glad that we reviewed it. Let's just cap it off here. What do you say, Adam? Will that do it?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've covered all the main bits. I think the only thing I didn't really go into much detail about is just the fact that I thought it was interesting that this was co-produced by Brad Pitt and starred him playing the particular role that he did, because people may be familiar with the fact that he's a big philanthropist. He is involved in a lot of philanthropic causes. He's all into, he's like a big proponent of like solving like global problems and global issues. It's medicine, stem cell research, like eco housing. He's got like a number of other NGOs and charities.
And his wife is he and his wife adopt all the children from Africa and all that.
That's right. Yeah. You keep on seeing them sort of popping up at United Nations affiliated things or like under their auspices. He's a big Obama supporter. He's rubbing shoulders with like the other guys in his position, like George Clooney, who's Council on Foreign Relations. So again, we've got this kind of this coterie at the very top of the A-list of Hollywood celebrities that are involved in these types of things and are working with the big global organizations for big global change. And so
the good guys doing that. They're
the good guys.
They're probably the good guys.
How good are they? How amazing are these guys? And look at them with all their money. They're not selfish. They're giving so much money. They're adopting kids from Africa. My goodness, how could you ever criticize anything that they do?
Yes.
So that alone is something that people can think about. Where we've got people in this position giving you a little bit of truth,
and again it was his character that was appealing to the truth movement. So definitely a lot to consider there, and that these Brad Pitts, the George Clooney's, their careers are shining as if they are the beacon of truth. These saviors that are coming in, these progressive saviors to help get the world back on track. All that sort of stuff. So that's definitely the case.
People can think about that.
yeah. But I enjoyed this review. So Yeah, I hope that the audience did as well. If you want more, please subscribe to our feed, podcast feed. You can find us on iTunes. Just type in Themes and Memes. You'll find us. We have an RSS feed. You can find it on Stitcher Radio. And our website, tmpodcast.com, is currently under reconstruction. It'll be, because we had a hack recently, but it's coming back. I'm working on it. It will be back and looking pretty good shortly. So, yeah, don't worry about that.
So thank you for joining me, Aaron. It's been an interesting conversation. Thank you to the audience for listening. As you say, the site is under reconstruction, and we shall be back maybe even this month again, maybe soon.
Yeah, hopefully. We hope to.
If we can.
Yeah.
I mean, if not, it'll be sort of in a few weeks in February. But I look forward to the next one.
It's been always good to talk to you, Adam. Take care.
This interview was recorded on 17th of January 2016.